Hello everyone, and welcome! Today I'll be trying to do a 100 Transcendence run with Jin. I'm going to switch off of Mixture Enhancement and Mixture Replenishment. I've always talked about them in the past being extremely strong, and they still are, but that's honestly the reason why I'm going to try switching off of them now. I don't like being able to just kind of tank through the boss fights and use a couple mixtures to get through them. So I'm going to be taking Complement of Death in order to heal from some chip damage that I might take throughout the course of the normal rooms or just over time during the run. But like I said, I don't want to be able to tank through the boss fights anymore with the mixture stuff. I want to try getting a little bit better at the boss fights. So I think what I'm going to do for tactics is maybe go Rending Impact with Attack Rend, and then we're going to use Ragna's first legacy skill instead of the second one, which does still provide some healing, but I'm going to try not to. I'll use the healing as more of a emergency tool at low health, compared to what before with Ragna's second legacy, it was also a similar thing where you could end up just tanking through a lot of the run because of the very high amount of healing it gave you. And that's the type of thing I want to start to get away from. I don't mind healing nearly as much if it's for the purpose of healing through chip damage or small healing things over time. But I want to try and get rid of the situations where I would, like I said, I just kind of tank through things by having so much healing. I think it'll be fun to try and push myself to get a little bit better at the boss fights and stuff like that. Because that's one thing I've always kind of skipped through, learning a lot of the boss patterns and stuff. Either through abusing invincibility frames, abusing very high damage outputs, and abusing healing as well. I'm kind of surprised that hit me there. I feel like I was behind him, but maybe I wasn't quite as far behind him as I thought I was. We did pick up the heavy attack potential, which is something I'm going to be looking to build into pretty much all of the heavy attack stuff. But for now, I won't be using it. I'll only start using it once I get the sheathing potentials, or the sheathing potential itself. Blocking is also something I want to just take right now. It's really a tough decision when it comes to picking your early game potentials, because what can happen is that you can end up in situations where you're stuck with like two to three potentials in total sometimes. But if you get to the first boss fight with just two potentials and neither of them are really anything too effective right now, then you're just gonna have a miserable time on the first boss fight. But at the same time, the more rerolls you go through early on, and the more rerolls you go through kind of consecutively in general, it makes things harder to reroll into things you want as well, if you're not getting them. Icicle Dash has kind of fallen into another similar situation where it's not something I necessarily do want early on, but it's something that is okay to have and will be more and more useful as the run goes on. And honestly, the early Icicle Dashes aren't really that bad either. You can spam the Icicle Dash into Dash Attack for some pretty easy damage on enemies, and the Icicle Dash comes out very quickly in terms of when it starts dealing damage. But I think I want to hold out for durable lightning orbs. I want them to last longer. And then I don't want to build into Skill Light Sphere either. I want to build into... I want to build into Legacy Light Sphere. Here we go. And I also really don't want any of this stuff. I don't want to waste too many of my refreshes here, though. But getting Durable Lightning Orb early on is definitely worth it. And then one other thing to look out for in runs in general, but in more specific for really high entropy stuff. I could take the exchange space here, but also there's going to be an guaranteed exchange space on stage 8. That always happens, unless you're on the easy mode, and then it should show up at stage 7 instead of stage 8. So I can save up my money for now, and then just always spend on that I can always spend on the guaranteed exchange space at the end, right before the boss fight. Even if that first space in the selection is hidden, it will always still be the exchange space, so you always know it's there. And then Skill Cold is going to be very important throughout the run, so good to pick that up as early as possible. I'm not entirely sure yet if I want to go into Dash Lightning or Dash Icicles. This is another thing that I can take it now, but it's more of something that would be an investment for later. I guess I'll go ahead and take Universal Enhancement. That's another similar case. In my last run, I got stuck into re-rolling things heavily, or I got stuck into re-rolling things way too heavily, and then I also just, on top of that, didn't get the build I was looking for, so I got stuck in a really bad spot, where I had a bunch of potentials that could be potentially useful with the right combinations of other things, but I just didn't have the right things to finish the setup, and I just had a miserable time throughout the run. I made it pretty close to the end, but I just didn't end up having the damage I needed. I'm pretty tempted to actually just go the rest here. MP recovery is a pretty harsh debuff, and then fewer rewards is also an annoying one. Exchange spaces are quite powerful in this game, especially when it comes to having the rerolls. And then the discount Mind Crystal as well. Having the options hidden makes them much less powerful, but they are still very powerful. So a couple things to look out for. There's patterns in the shops, so even if you're on 150 with everything hidden, you can still tell certain things. The selection on the right here will always be a buff for 50 cost. These two options will always be something between healing and mixtures and debuff removal. Healing and debuff removal will be 150, and then mixtures will be 300. And then this option can also be something like debuff removal. But between these two options, it's generally, if it's 150, it is a potential, or it's a potential, an HP space, or an MP space. Sorry, I had to look at my notes to double check that. Do I even have the ability to block right now? Okay, I did pick up the blocking potential. So we can pick up that for now. Triple jump isn't a terrible option either. I really want my sheathing right now, though. Okay, triple dash I'm also very happy with. Do I really care about airborne damage reduction? Probably not. I do have the option of refreshing here just for the discount. Let's see what happens. It's actually... It rolling a buff isn't the best thing there, but it rolling speedrun reward is actually quite helpful. Rerolling for discounts is something that I'm not entirely sure if it's worth it or not, and it's also very hard to tell if it's actually worth it, because it's obviously a luck-based situational thing. If you reroll just for discount and you end up getting a potential out of it, then yeah, it's extremely good. If you reroll and get a heal while you're at full health, then obviously in that case it's not. So it's one of those things where it's hard to say if there's really a correct option there or not. Okay, so we don't really have our strong DPS option for Jin right now, but just between... The Icicle Dashes have a lot of utility, especially on top of having the Triple Dash on top of that, so it makes it where you can attack the boss very safely there, and then the tactic setup is also very strong that we have right now. Mostly between the Thunder Orbs and the Lightning that they spawn. That was doing a majority of the work there. I won't be going into Covenant's Black Markets or Trials for any of my 100 Entropy runs. At least ones that I do for videos like this. Because I don't want the runs to be won because of random broken effects. There's some really overpowered stuff in there that will basically just win the run for you. And if I'm going to be showing off like a video of the character in 100 Entropy, I want to be showing off the character itself, doing as much as possible. Fatal Rend is definitely a good option to pick up here. The Light Spear stuff and the Frost Explosion would also be nice, so these are all really good options here to take. With the Frost, I should be able to get back into it pretty easily, and then with the Light Spears, they're not quite as important, but I did get them again, so I'm more than okay with that. Man, not having any of the sheathing stuff or the enhanced attacks feels really weird by this point. Because that's something I would always just be having early on if I had more potential selections. But that is one part of 100 Entropy that can be fun sometimes, is being forced into situations where you have a different build than you're used to. I don't think I'm too worried about the set of debuffs I have right now, so I will start stacking some MP. If I start getting into like a blocking build with Yukikaze, his down plus skill, I'm going to need a lot of NP in order to be able to use that effectively. If I can start stacking it now, I want to. And then think we actually just see what this is. Perfect, it's a potential. Attacking space isn't a bad option there, but I don't really need too many more ice tactics. They're more of something that's an extra bonus at this point, instead of being something I need to complete the run with. Like, the Frost Burst was something that I do need for my potential, or for my damage output later on, but the rest is just going to be small additional bonus damage. Events are another thing that's hard to gauge the value of. If you go into an event and you get something like a potential, then it always feels really good. But exchange points can also go into just like a variety of different things. I can use it for a heal, I can use it for potentials or other things. Even if it's still even if it's very difficult to see what's in the shop because of them being hidden, I still have a lot more agency over the shop than the event space, which is how I think of things. And then again, we're going to save the shop here, even though we have quite a bit of money saved up, because I know there's a guaranteed shop at the final stage before the boss fight. So I'll probably just see what this is. Thinking about room selections and high entropy is a really interesting thing, because it can get even more complicated than the stuff I just said. So, for example, you could have cases where, even though the event space would be what I consider like less efficient there over the exchange space, there's another layer of things in that the timer setting in the top left is always ticking down that you have to consider with your room selections as well. If I was on a run where I was clearing out the normal rooms and bosses really slowly already, then one thing I would need to consider is, so if I go into a space like the exchange spot, I cannot speak. If I go into something like the exchange point space, then I have to go through a combat room, which takes up a bunch of time. But if I go into the event space, then it does not take any time out of the timer. You can always use the special types of stages, like shops or T-shows, etc., in order to save out on that timer setting. Which in a lot of cases on even like 100 entropy, normal 100 entropy, the timer has been nerfed, so you get a lot more time now. And then also, if you just have like a really good build setup, you can outpace the timer a lot more easily than you used to be able to. But now that we have Transcendence mode, the timer has kind of started becoming a bigger issue again. It depends on the character. Some characters just naturally do very high DPS, even if they don't get an optimal build. But for other characters, the timer with the boss fights becomes a lot more of an issue, because boss fights have just really extremely high ramped up HP in this mode. So the other two options I have right now are building into Thunderbolt to get into Thunderbolt Lightsphere, or I can use the dash slot for Icicles as well and build into Icicle Light Spears. But I think the better option is definitely building into Thunderbolt for the Lightspear Thunderbolts. So now we're on stage 8, and I want to make sure I go into the guaranteed exchange space here. And again, I'm looking for mainly stuff over here if they're on discount, or if I really need a healing. And then over here, I'm looking for stuff that's 150 cost, because that can be a potential. Okay, finally we get the sheathing stuff. We're going to be using this with the heavy attacks, especially as the heavy attacks get even more upgraded. And then I don't think I need any of the healing and stuff for now. I'm not sure. It's hard to say how often buffs are to take. Buffs, not being able to see the buffs make it a difficult decision, because some buffs are really, really good, and others just aren't too noticeable. So there's some new tech I found out with Jin that I haven't shown off since the last time I did a video with him. I've talked about it in streams, but I haven't done a Jin video since then. I should probably wait and talk about it after I'm done with the boss fight. That might have actually been a really bad time to freeze him. It worked out, though. That boss fight was still a little rough. Mostly due to my own gameplay, but I also just don't really have a DPS option right now. And this is definitely not going to help with DPS options. It does help overall, though. I'm trying to think of if I want a mixture here. I'm not at kill streak limit yet. I would need 20 more kills to be able to start healing. The only problem is mixtures are very expensive. So unless I get lucky on a discount with one of them, I won't likely be getting any more throughout the run. The new tech I learned with Jin is that if you do a jump attack fairly low to the ground, and you just keep holding the attack button, you'll get an auto-timed sheath at the moment you land. So what you could see me doing during part of the boss fights when I was able to, and right here, is that I do a jump attack, and then... So as soon as I do this jump attack, I just keep holding down the attack button. You can see there, if I do accidentally jump too high, it doesn't work. But if I do a low jump, I get the instantly charged hold attacks. Because if you do the hold attacks on a sheath timing, they'll charge instantly. It's not something that's too overly powerful right now, but once we get the Great Homing Slash upgrade, we'll also be able to automatically do the fully held Great Homing Slash at instant timing, instead of actually having to sit there and hold it down. And that's where the hold attack build becomes very powerful. Obviously, the main problem is that I'm just kinda at the mercy of luck for that. with it being 100 entropy. I'm curious what this would be. I'm hoping it's something like a rest stage, or maybe even a Sortisho. Okay, I'm not unhappy with Sortisho. I'm not too happy with it being a tactic ascension though. I would really like to get some healing here, but it's just not gonna work out. The problem with the Mind Crystal I have for healing right now is that it's something conditional, which is one of the reasons why I've always said that just the mixture and the mixture enhancement and the mixture replenishment is way too strong, is because there's no condition attached to them, and then on top of that, they just heal way more than other options would. Okay, max HP does kind of work here. It's not the same as getting, like, a heal, since a heal would probably be for 40% or more. I can't remember off the top of my head, though. But when I buy, or when I get a 20% heal, or, sorry, when I get something like a 20% max HP increase, it does actually give me that 20% heal as well. I think now, though, as long as I can keep up my kill streak for this room, I think we'll be okay again on healing. I just have to be a little bit careful about stuff like enemies having super armor and random projectiles and intermittent thunder. Luckily, they don't have afterlife bombs yet. Things get a lot more complicated once afterlife bombs start coming into play. And this is exactly what we want. Now you can hold the hold attacks and then use the skill button to turn them into great homing slashes, which is normally pretty unsafe to do, but due to having the sheath timing stuff, you can do them on a sheath timing and then instantly do the great homing slash. So I'm doing the same thing that I said earlier. I'm just doing a low to the ground jump attack, and then I'm holding the attack button and then pressing the skill button when I land, instead of just releasing the attack button. And you can start chaining these back to back pretty quickly, whether it just be the regular hold attack ones or the skill version. Also, if you get the universal enhancement that you're able to enhance your attacks with an MP cost, you'll unlock a passive for the great homing slashes on the hold attacks, where they'll start pretty much taking no MP cost. They still do have some, but it gets reduced quite heavily. I feel like I lost my kill streak there for a second, but then I didn't take damage. And then I took damage after the kill streak dropped. But I don't know, maybe I just saw things wrong there. Actually, let me double check on the potentials real quick. Yeah, it is still... We're still missing the costless MP thing. Because we need the... Wait, what are we missing? This seems like it's wrong. Oh no, never mind. My bad. There's two different MP things. Wait, is... That bottom one is just not here. Wait, I'm stupid, I guess. You can just scroll down an extra time. I don't know how I missed that. Okay, yes, it is the potential that I thought it was. I'm kind of tempted to start buying buffs, since we have kind of the main potential build that I want set up. Triple jump would also be nice to have here. That's also always good. And then Yuki Kaze also isn't a bad thing to have. Okay, and then we get the red effect there set up. Nice. So now, thanks to the red effect setup I have with other stuff, my lightning orbs are going to spawn a thunderbolt, which then spawns a light spear. You can see both of them are just automatically going off all the time, which is going to add in a lot of free damage. And then also having the instant great homing slashes is going to add a lot of damage onto the build as well. But you can see that the bosses in Transcendence mode are already getting to the point where they're at 300,000 HP. So they just start to take a really long time to kill, depending on your character. Some characters have the DPS to still just melt them down, but other characters aren't that lucky. I probably shouldn't have. I went for the fancy finisher there and paid for it by not getting enough DPS out of it. It's fine, though. So I think leveling up Ragnar's Dead Spike could be an interesting thing, just to get the extra recovery effect on it. I'm curious how much of a difference that makes, but I don't want to level it up since it's counterintuitive to some of the things I talked about before, not wanting to be able to kind of heal through boss fights like I have previously. I think I just go with buffs here. When it comes to debuffs, you hit a certain point where if you're not clearing them constantly, then I feel like if you're doing debuff removal, it's harder to get rid of the debuffs that you actually want to get rid of. Instead, you'll end up getting rid of other debuffs instead, just since there's so many options to choose from. So in that case, I would rather just have the buffs instead. The most efficient way to clear debuffs is also to just perfect clear bosses, but that's not always something that happens. Also, now that I picked up the enhanced version of Fubeki and Sekajin, I'll probably be using that a little bit more too. I'm honestly kind of surprised you can get the enhanced versions of moves without having the actual passive or the enhancement itself. I always thought those two things would be, like, required. Or, I mean, I always thought the passive itself would be required for the other ones. It's also one of those weird cases where it feels like they could really just cut down on potential bloat by not having them be separate things in the first place. It's weird that you have to unlock the enhanced moves for your general skill set, and then also have, on some specific skills, it's not unlocked automatically there. They have their own specific potentials for it. I honestly don't think I can really tell much of a difference with leveling up Taukaka's passive. Or not passive, her legacy skill. Honestly, a lot of the legacy skill upgrades end up feeling really underwhelming, in my opinion. Except for maybe some of the stuff that are more towards the buff effects. Or something like Jin's legacy active, where it just freezes for longer. Which isn't necessarily as much of a problem with the upgrades themselves. It's more of a problem with the legacy skills themselves being very underwhelming to begin with. Maybe I might need to start doing a little bit more hold attack spamming in the normal rooms as well. I'm not really killing enemies too slowly, but the problem is I need to go pretty quick through these last few areas. Because the boss fight itself of this area is going to have a lot of HP, and then especially when it comes to Susano, he is going to have a ton of total HP pool. Because the HP from Transcendence kind of seems like it applies equally to all three of his phases. So he ends up with, I think, close to 2 million HP, if I remember right. So at this point, it's a situation like I mentioned earlier on in the run. I could go max HP for the guaranteed max HP, which would be nice, but I'm already pretty good on HP limit. 370 is not bad at all. And then, like I just mentioned, I do want to start thinking about the timer a little bit more in this section. So, by going into the Sortisho, I don't waste any time off of that. And even though I wouldn't consider that a good Sortisho space, it still has value just by the value of saving out on timer settings. If you ever just want to, like, speedrun through a run for some reason, the best way of speedrunning is to just take as many special stages as you can. That way you don't have to go through combat rooms. Obviously, the difficult part of the speedruns there is getting enough potentials and maybe sometimes tactics as well. Make sure your character's also strong enough. You can make your character really weak on accident by just going into too many rests and other stuff. No damage reward would have been very nice if I got it earlier in the run. It's not really going to have any relevance now. No damage reward and speedrun reward are always very nice to have in high entropy, just because of how strong shops are with refreshes. I'm not too thrilled about seeing Oread here. I would much rather have Non, but we'll give it a shot. Man, I can't find the timing for it right now. There's actually a timing where you can sheath time the Great Homing Slash back into itself. But What? I feel like that really should not have hit me. I'm missing, like, all my timings here, too. That butterfly caught me really off guard. I was about to jump up there and go for a block, but I got tagged by a butterfly there. That hit me too? I really thought I could get enough jump height there. That also looked really strange to me. Dang it. A lot of that stuff was definitely on me, but some of that stuff was really frustrating as well. Like, at the end there, the butterfly is just kind of spawning on my location. Which is probably something I could have accounted for, too. And just generally played in a way that I'm not towards the edge of the stage for that exact reason. That's really unfortunate, though. Since I had such a good run going before that, and then I just kind of threw it away by blundering a lot of things in that fight. With how frantic the fight was getting, I started missing a lot of my sheath timings, which just kind of threw my entire pacing off for the rest of the fight. But oh well, that's how things go sometimes. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.